Thanks, Arena. My name is Zach Chandler. I'm the Director of Research, IT, and Innovation in the Office of the Vice Provost and Dean of Research. That's a whole lot of syllables. We also go by RET for people that know us well. And it's my pleasure to be able to introduce my team today and a project that we've been working on continuously for many years. The SOLO system, Stanford on and off campus learning opportunities, started out as off campus only, but it turned out we did well. So people wanted to keep adding things. So this was a big year for us. And in a minute, you're going to hear from my other teammates, Eric Toupin from Atom Design Group, Pauline Lamoureux from my team, and Lorraine Begg, I believe, is here as well. Lorraine, are you here?
Yeah.
It's a team effort. And everyone worked really hard this year to move us from Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS. So these are large, complex websites in Drupal 7 that have been around since, about 2015. So I think we're on year 7. And like the rest of the universe, we faced a decision at the end of life of Drupal 7. So here we have Solo, and then you can advance one slide, please, and you can see that we have a sister project, Stanford Seed Funding. So Solo is for student learning opportunities, and Seed Funding is for researchers and research teams. So, some of the large accelerators that are happening now from the presidential, vision for long-range plans actually happen here. So we're really pleased with how these platforms are performing. They've grown immensely over the years, and they acquired a very significant footprint of custom code on top of Drupal 7, that was the problem that we were facing in our decision-making for how to proceed. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a really brief introduction, letting you know about how we got started on this path. I've actually been monitoring the Backdrop project since its inception in 2013. I actually have a copy of an email I sent to my team at the time, Stanford Web Services, saying there's this thing called Backdrop, it just started. Maybe we should pay attention to it. So, it only took me 9 years to do something about that. But if we look at the underlying problem to solve, it's that the Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 gulf is very large because starting in Drupal 8, Drupal acquired a very significant change by ingesting in the Symfony PHP framework. This is awesome for Drupal. It is much more robust, professional, object-oriented code. The benefits of Drupal 8 Plus are well documented. It was also going to be extremely expensive for complex workflow-based systems like ours to rebuild everything in Drupal 8. And this is where the Backdrop value proposition came into play. Because Backdrop is a fork of Drupal 7, right as it was becoming Drupal 8. So it's not just Drupal 7. There's actually a lot of innovative code in there that Eric will talk more about. But I had a hypothesis that we could upgrade from Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS for about 10 to 20% of the cost. And part of my job in DOR is to be a steward of Stanford's resources. So I thought long and hard about this. I did an analysis of a systems development lifecycle, taking a look at all of the packages in libraries and frameworks upon which these systems depend. So I charted this out for both Drupal and Backdrop. And when I say SDLC, I'm talking more about the systems side and less the software side. So if you Google SDLC, you'll see a lot about software development lifecycle. That's about, is your shop agile or not? How do you deliver code? What's your plan for maintaining secure code, things like that. This is more of the systems view, where I was taking a look at how every layer of the stack has its own release cycle, has its own end of life. PHP 7.4 to 8, 8.1, etc. Drupal's, Symfony on top of that, and then Drupal on top of that, and then our project on top of that. So I think it's incumbent upon IT leaders to pay attention to these things and do some calculations about total cost of ownership. So I challenged my team. I didn't tell them this is what we were doing. I invited them to think about whether or not this was a good idea, if we could accomplish it, and if it served the mission of DOR. Let's see. So that's sort of the story of what set us on this course. And I'm going to turn it over to my friend Eric Toupin from Matt and Design Group to get into the details about what happened next.
Cool. Thanks, Zach. Everybody can hear me and see slides? Awesome. So I am going to talk in a little bit more detail about Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS upgrade. My name is Eric Toupin. I am a senior developer at Atten Design Group, and I've been working with Atten for a little more than 15 years, with Drupal for more than a decade. I'm also the lead developer, as Zach mentioned, of Solo and SSF, that's Stanford on and off campus learning opportunities, and Stanford seed funding. And I have been the lead developer since their inception. We've been partnered with Stanford's Research Information Technology and Innovation team, this team, since way back when we started this in 2015. So I'm planning on talking about 4 things briefly today. One is a little bit more about what is Backdrop and why someone might use it. Another is who specifically would benefit from Backdrop, our case studies about these conversions for these 2 websites, and then our outcome and outlook and how that might be applied to the rest of y'all or anyone considering this move. Before I jump into my outline, I have kind of a cheat slide here. Just want to throw in a little bit more context about Drupal 7. There's some super interesting stuff about Drupal 7. One is that it's been around for a decade, which means that there has been more than a decade of conceptual continuity, meaning that people have been contributing documentation, contributed code, working together, collaborating on projects for 10 years, building all of this context in Drupal 7. So it's no surprise that there are still hundreds of thousands of websites that use Drupal 7. Drupal 7 end of life is imminent. Imminent, sort of. So we've heard that a couple of times. It's now staged for the end of next year. And a little bit about what end of life is, specifically for Drupal 7. Drupal does not turn into a pumpkin in November of 2023. Basically, it loses security support, and that means that the quality and security of your product begins to degrade over time. I believe I'm preaching to the choir here. I think everyone here knows what this is about. And then just to reiterate something Zach already said, the upgrade path from Drupal 7 to now Drupal 9 is a rebuild path. That means that you are constructing your website from the ground up using new technology. So 2 things that I would love for everyone here to keep in mind as we talk through this. One is that rebuild truly feasible for you and your organization? The answer for many is yes. They have set aside resources. They have a plan in Drupal 8. They have a team ready to do it. And for those, that's a great solution. Another question is it desirable? If there is an option to continue having a supported secure website into the foreseeable future at a fraction of the cost, is it worth considering? Okay, back to the real outline. What is Backdrop and why would we use it? So a little bit of a spoiler here. I will be positioning Backdrop as an economic option for a Drupal 7 upgrade, period. That's what my portion of this talk is about. If you remember one thing of everything that I say today, I would remember this, that you could spend a small fraction of your estimated rebuild cost in upgrading to Backdrop CMS. A lot of people, when they hear Backdrop, think, isn't that a new thing to kind of deal with the Drupal 7 end of life? A little bit of a misnomer. Backdrop's been around for a long time. Zach mentioned started in 2013. There was a stable release in 2015, and it has been supported and secure since then. Backdrop CMS is viable, it is secure, it's innovative, and it has a direct upgrade path from Drupal 7. So, few details. When I say viable, all I mean is if you have a Drupal 7 website, it's going to work on Backdrop CMS, no questions asked. Secure, Backdrop has a security team. They have since inception. It's been around for 7 years. And innovative, Backdrop is not just kind of an end-of-life version of Drupal 7. They have completely revamped configuration, caching, the layout system, quite a few innovative pieces to this platform. So Zach mentioned that Backdrop is a fork of Drupal 7. And for the developers in the room, that will make a lot of sense. For non-developers, you can think of this a little bit like shared ancestors. So way back in 2015, Backdrop was a copy of Drupal 7. So they have that shared ancestor of Drupal 7. Now modern Drupal 7 has moved a little bit in its own direction, and modern Backdrop has moved in its own direction. You could think of this kind of like humans and chimps sharing a modern ancestor. I think that I'd love to say Backdrop is the human in this story. There is some interesting stuff about Backdrop in terms of philosophy. I would absolutely recommend, if you're interested in this platform, go to the Backdrop website, look at their philosophy page. I'm going to just kind of encapsulate a few of these things. One, Backdrop's focus is on users. Normally in the web industry, when we talk about users, we're talking about the folks who are interacting with your website, your users that come to buy your products, consume your content, et cetera. In this case, what we're talking about are builders, people that are using Backdrop CMS to construct websites. Backdrop is built for builders. It's prioritized on their philosophy page. The next highest priority is contributors, meaning actual developers who are interacting with the code to build new modules and new extensions. And the last priority is core contributors, which are the folks that are actually keeping Backdrop running. A few principles that I've kind of pulled out from that page as well. And again, there are several, and I recommend that you read through these. One is that Backdrop CMS is committed to being backwards compatible with Drupal 7. That means your upgrade path is going to be easy. Another is that it's easy to learn. Backdrop CMS is not only aimed at skilled and experienced developers, but intermediate developers as well, who just have a few years experience. Backdrop is secure and it is fast. It is faster than Drupal 7. Please do take a look at the philosophy page. One last note that I have here is that Backdrop is considerably smaller than Drupal in terms of community. That is a given. There are more than 100 core contributors at any given time. There's more than 100 contributed contributors building modules and extensions at any given time, but that's still a fraction of Drupal 7 or Drupal 9 communities. That said, it has been secure and supported since their first stable version. So what is Backdrop? It is a fork of Drupal 7. It's an upgrade path from Drupal 7. It's fast, secure, and innovative, and you might use it because it's such an economic solution. A little bit more about who specifically should use Backdrop. So I, of course, have just completed this work in the last couple of months, and my opinion, perhaps biased, is that if you're on Drupal 7, Backdrop is worth considering, full stop. A little bit further into that candidacy camp, for those who don't have plans for Drupal 8 or Drupal 9, they haven't resourced it, they don't have a team in place, they don't have the funds in place, this makes you an excellent candidate for Backdrop. Satisfied with your existing platform. If you like the website you have, Backdrop is a great solution. If you're worried about rebuilding just because of pesky security issues, I would say Backdrop is an excellent solution. And then finally, if your development team, whether that's internal, your partners, vendors, whoever it is you're working with, are willing to work on Backdrop CMS, can work in Backdrop CMS, I would say you're an excellent candidate. There's a bit of a spoiler there. If you're a developer, you can work in Backdrop CMS. If you have Drupal experience, Drupal 9 or Drupal 7, Drupal 8, it'll be even easier. But any intermediate to advanced developer can work in Backdrop CMS. You know, in talking to the Backdrop folks over the last couple of months about a variety of topics, but one of them about the best use case for using Backdrop, one of the things that we talked about is that there's really incredible savings on both opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of complexity of your website. So very simple Drupal 7 websites and very complex Drupal 7 websites stand to gain a lot from converting to Backdrop. So on the simple side, let's say that you have a Drupal 7 website built with core modules or very popular, very supported contributed modules. You don't have a development team, or you have a small development team, and you're using a out-of-the-box theme, or you're willing to switch to a comparable theme in Backdrop CMS. If that's you, this upgrade is fast. Fast is hours to days, depending on further complexity from there. But if you're using basic modules and themes, you can expect a point-and-click interface to get your site from Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS. One note here is that the theme upgrade is technical. What I mean is if you have a custom theme and you want to upgrade that to Backdrop CMS, you need a developer to do that. If you're willing to choose a different comparable theme, again, we get back into that kind of point and click, and you're going to be done quick. Okay, on the far other end of that spectrum are extremely complicated Drupal 7 websites. Solo and SSF fall squarely into this category. Drupal 7 websites that are highly customized, highly complex. Also, if you have a development team that is flexible and willing to work with Backdrop CMS and willing to do the technical conversion, this is going to be a great fit for you. So this is obviously much different than that point and click upgrade, although there is a point and click part to it when you get started. It's much slower than that. We're talking about weeks or months, again, depending on the complexity of your site. And it's going to include updating contributed modules, refactoring your code, and there's a learning curve. You have to learn Backdrop CMS. All of that included, it is still significantly more economic than a rebuild. Both the module and theme upgrades are going to be technical. You need a developer to do this for a more complicated site. And then one note here is just to make sure that you're planning on support for your sites. If you don't have anyone in mind to support your sites after converting, you can take a look at backdropcms.org/support/resources. There are plenty of developers there that will be happy to work with you. So we've talked about what Backdrop is, that you might use it because it's such an economic option for your Drupal 7 website, that if you have a real simple or real complex site, that this puts you kind of in the great savings camp. And now let's talk a little bit about our case studies, about what happened with Solo and SSF. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to play through a couple of slides, and I'm going to talk about some features of these websites as I do it. So if you visit solo.stanford.edu or seedfunding.stanford.edu, you can see the sites, but you're going to see the front end. And most of the complexity is on the back end, where we're creating these opportunities and offering them and processing applications. And I'll talk a little bit about that, the piece that you can't really see. In order to do that, I got to turn on an autoplay. So give me just 1 second here. Okay. And then just to kind of define this real quick, the screens that we're about to walk through, that you're about to see, are a program officer on the Stanford on and off campus learning opportunities, creating an opportunity and an application form for that opportunity. And then a couple of the screens that are focused around managing those applications when people submit applications, and also some select pieces of the process throughout. The goal here is to emphasize the complexity of this site. And see if autoplay is going to work for me. Great, I think that's going to do it. Okay, so just so you know, the seed funding website is very similar to Stanford on and off campus learning opportunities. It is directed at a completely different audience and has a couple of different features. So both of these platforms represent 7 years of ongoing development. That's rapid sprint cycles that take a month or two, releasing new features every month or two. These platforms facilitate complex application management workflows that were developed specifically for Stanford faculty, staff, and students. The platforms are highly customized, 61 contributed modules being used and custom configured, 38 custom modules that we've written over the last 7 years to serve specific features to specific audiences. We have 2 custom API integrations, one with Stanford Profiles that pulls over data about faculty and staff to attach to their applications, and another from MAIS, which is middleware and integration services, pulling over student records and attaching those to student applications. We use single sign-on, that's SUNET login. We bring over content about who these users are as they're signing in so that we know if they're students, if they're faculty, et cetera. When program officers are managing dozens or hundreds of applications, they can download them on the fly as large packets of PDFs. So we're rendering PDFs on the fly for all of these applications. Part of that automated download manager is also offering all of this data in CSV so that program officers can plug it into their own spreadsheets and use it how they wish. Across these platforms, there are more than 5 distinct user roles, and each role has unique capabilities and unique experiences on the sites. So for example, a program officer is creating the opportunities that are being offered to students or to faculty. Applicants are applying for them. We have student program officers that can join a team with program officers and help them manage their content. We have reviewers, we have recommenders. There's actually a couple more, but those are the primary ones. We also have a customizable notification system that sends designed HTML emails, one of a couple of different, a dozen or so different, sorry, actually that's wrong, a couple dozen. So I think it's actually like 22 or 24 different notifications that get sent to applicants and to program officers throughout these workflows to kind of remind them of where they are, what their next steps are, et cetera. Since their inception, these websites have seen more than 18,000 Stanford users, and we have offered more than 1,000 opportunities across the two sites. Monthly, on the high end, we see as many as 20,000 visits and serve as many as 275,000 pages. All right. That's a little bit of the spiel about what these sites are. And again, the purpose there was to make sure that it's real clear that we're squarely in that camp of very complicated Drupal 7 websites. So now let's talk a little bit about how the process went for us, how the Backdrop CMS upgrade went for us, what the outcome was, and what the outlook is for these two platforms. So the first thing that I'll do here is talk a little bit about the likely alternative. As I mentioned a second ago, these platforms were developed over 7 years of ongoing rapid development cycles, and they include 7 or 8 distinct phases of application management and dozens of features across those. The 7 or 8 is 8 for the student-facing one and 7 for Stanford seed funding. A little bit more information about just complexity here. So we originally were using Selenium as a testing framework to do front-end tests for these two platforms. We're now using Cypress. I'll mention that again in a second. So Selenium is basically like a robot or a script that is running your browser. So you're watching your browser and it's going to the website, logging in as users with these various roles and actually performing their tasks by typing into forms, completing things, clicking buttons, and making sure everything is working as expected. That's what we do for automated functional testing. So on my local machine, running these Selenium tests in a no lag, like immediate page load environment, where as it's running, I'm watching this browser just kind of flip through all these different pages. Watching those tests complete takes more than 30 minutes. There are 70 suites of tests and thousands of test steps that are going through in order to make sure that these sites are working. So when we started thinking about this last year, about what are we going to do about the end of life for Drupal 7, our initial conservative estimate for rebuilding these platforms in Drupal 9 was around 3,500 to 4,000 hours. So at At Design Group, that's a 4-person team working full-time for about 5 months. And then let's take a quick look at how this actually did turn out for us. And the first thing that I want to do here is recognize some difficulties. So I think Zach mentioned the term is rainbows and unicorns. I was going to say cake and ice cream, whatever it is that's like super easy. It was not super easy. This is kind of a complex upgrade process. There were a lot of difficult moments. A couple that I'll mention. We had to convert the encrypt module. We had to figure out single sign-in because simple SAML PHP login wasn't ready for Backdrop CMS. We had to figure out the CapEx integration, which is complex in the Drupal 7 version. And there were a couple of moments when we were beginning this that I was thinking, oh gosh, did we bite off more than we can chew? Is this really going to be doable? That said, we were able to pull it off. So a couple of things that were included in this conversion, of those 61 contributed modules that I mentioned before, 17 did not have versions in Backdrop CMS. So we were able to make preliminary conversions for all 17 of those modules. What I mean by preliminary is working for us and not yet available to the public. Of those 17, about 10 have what I'll call pioneer versions, which means they are available to the public. You can find those on Backdrop CMS contributed space, but they're not quite on version 1 yet. So any developers in the room that would like to work in Backdrop, here's an invitation to help us get it there. We also did the full conversion of our 38 custom modules and a complete overhaul of some of the legacy systems that we were using. So for example, some of you might be familiar with context in Drupal 7, which manages the logic used to decide what content appears on what page and what context, right? Context doesn't exist in Backdrop CMS, and that was kind of folded into the layout system. So we had to kind of rebuild how a lot of the things were working in our older Drupal 7 version. In addition to module conversions, theme conversions, a couple bit of overhaul pieces that we had to do, there was about 250 significant changes in the code base. And this is a kind of a goofy way to measure this, but just so that you know what I'm talking about, after converting all of the contrib modules, after going through all of our custom code, is I ran into bugs and problems where things needed to be fixed and to work in Backdrop CMS. I added comments in the code that basically said, hey, big Backdrop CMS change here. And later, counting those up, there was about 250 places where real significant changes had to happen. Another thing that I want to mention here is that our theme conversion was a pretty lightweight approach. So Backdrop CMS has a very cool layout system that allows you to kind of drag and drop pieces around into various layouts. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, there's no direct upgrade path from Drupal 7 to Backdrop's theme system. And so we ended up taking a lightweight approach to that and not fully taking advantage of the layout system. So our entire Backdrop CMS upgrade process took us 1.5 developers. So I mentioned before, four developers full-time for a rebuild. For us, it was 1.5. And what I mean by half there is myself full-time and Joel Steidel, who's the director of engineering at Atom Design Group, who helped a little bit less than half-time during that process. It took us 3 calendar months, including vacation time. So that was all of October, November, and December. But as everyone in the Stanford audience knows, half of December is vacation time for y'all. And it took us a total of 550 hours, which interestingly enough, we also completed a variety of non-backdrop related tasks, which I'll touch on right now. So I'm calling this one Room to Breathe. And what I mean here is that we switched to Backdrop CMS because the economy of this solution gave us a lot more room to breathe. And it let us make some decisions in the moment as we were going through this process to do some further upgrades that really made sense at that time. So for example, we decided to move our platform from a legacy hosting environment to Pantheon.io, mostly for performance and for uptime. Also some really cool development environment management stuff. I'll stop plugging that. We had to adapt our code base to work with Pantheon. There are some specific streams that you have to use for that. That was included in the 550 hours. We also did a full migration from legacy hosting over to Pantheon. Anyone who's done that knows that it takes a lot of people working together, a lot of time to get things lined up. That was included in the 550 hours. We also entirely rewrote our testing suite. So the thing that I mentioned a little bit earlier, we had 70 plus suites of automated front-end testing written in a Selenium-based platform. And we switched all of those to a little bit more modern, a little bit faster Cypress.js. And that all fit in those 550 hours. So a little bit about where we are today. Solo and seed funding are secure. They are supported. They are completely PHP 8 ready. Also, both platforms are ready for ongoing feature development. So we're already back into the rhythm that we like to keep with these platforms of continuing to release new features. Also, both platforms perform 50% better than they did before, measured by average page load time. So before we were close to 3 seconds average page load, and now we're closer to 2 seconds. I think that's split between Backdrop CMS and Pantheon.io, but it's hard to know exactly. And then kind of the final line here is that our entire upgrade, all of these nice to haves that we've talked about, switching hosting providers, rebuilding test suites, all of that was achieved for 15% of a conservative estimated rebuild cost. As a developer, in my mind, from my point of view, that is an absolute win and great reason to consider using Backdrop CMS for your Drupal 7 upgrade. That's all I have to say for this part. I'm gonna switch this over to Pauline, who's gonna tell you a little bit about how this felt from the product manager perspective. Pauline, let me know if you need to change slides or anything.
This is perfect. Thank you so much, Eric. And hello, everyone. My name is Pauline Larmaro, and I'm the Senior Product Manager on the Research, Information, Technology, and Innovation team. We can never pronounce our team's name. It's 4 awesome words. Pick the order in which you want to tell them. And we are in the Vice President, research. So, and I am the Product Manager for Solo and Seed Funding. So I'll share kind of the product manager perspective. So first I'll say that I feel very fortunate because for many years I kept hearing the alarming the alarms of, hey, it's going to be Drupal 7 end of life. And, as I was thinking, what are we going to do? Zach was whispering in my ear, and I have an idea. So that was really cool. Still, as a product manager, this looked like a huge thing. It looked like it was going to eat a significant portion of our budget, and a big thing to do. And we have, as Eric explained, very well established platforms with a ton of features, and faculty, students, and staff members have come to rely on them pretty much 24/7. And on top of that, over the past 7-8 years, we've been pushing every month new features. So, for us, that meant we were going to have to do some things very differently for some time. So what was really scary for us? So we had a lot of questions. So the first thing that was really concerning to me was that it had really never been done before. So there was no one with a similar website that we could go to ask, hey, what did you learn? How did it go? All of that. And then we had a ton of questions, such as, are all of the features going to be converted? Is anything going to be lost? How much is this really going to cost? What else? Is everything going to be working the same? And then are users going to be noticing a difference either afterwards, or even, what is the surgery going to look like? Is there going to be a break of service for a certain amount of time? Is this going to interfere with student peak application time, which is right around December and January? So kind of what, where the kind of deadline that we were targeting. So those were the questions that we had. And then on the other hand, the rebuild in Drupal 8 looked like it was going to cost an arm and a leg. And then it wasn't really clear what the benefits would be for us specifically. So when the time came, my team sort of came together and we came up with a plan. And I'll share 3 strategies that we decided to use. The first one is that we decided to run a small experiment first. And so the developers selected what they thought was a good representation of what needed to be converted. And then they did that. And then that gave us a sense of the level of effort. And then we kind of extrapolated and deducted that, okay, this is what the whole thing might, big estimate here, might take in terms of time and level of effort. So that was our first strategy. Effectively it came down to dipping one toe in the water, because really, we didn't know, and there was only so much that we could do. And then we had to take the big jump. The second strategy that we used is that right before we launched, we gave ourselves significant time to thoroughly test everything. So obviously we used our shiny new tests a lot. And we also, Larry Big, who's here on the call today, did a ton of testing herself. And she also invited our community of stakeholders to help us do some testing. So we had a lot of program officers help us test things out. So that was strategy number 2. The third strategy was that we communicated a ton. So we communicated to stakeholders before we started to kind of give them a heads up about what was about to happen. And also that, they wouldn't be, the typical monthly new features that they were accustomed to. And during, we gave them updates as to where we were. And then we had to push the launch deadline. So we gave them also quite a lot of updates towards the end. So we did a ton of communication. So outcomes. So we launched in January, and it's been 3 months. And so we're really excited. And sure, there were a few unavoidable bugs that even automated tests plus awesome team couldn't catch. That's unavoidable. But we attended to them really quickly, and things look wonderful. In fact, we got a huge performance boost. So it feels like, you know, pretty much driving a new fancy car now. And we save a lot of dollars as well, which we can use for development and visible development. That means a lot more to stakeholders, obviously. I'll share a few unexpected wins, and I don't want to repeat some of the things that Eric already mentioned, but just kind of more from the product manager's perspective. So first, like really the performance boost was way higher than what any of us expected, I think. So that was awesome. And then the second one that I'll share, and Eric talked a little bit about, you know, how we upgraded, we had that opportunity to upgrade our tests. And so for me, as a product manager, it was really a good reminder that sometimes when you make a big change, other opportunities come along, and to kind of let go of the things that no longer really fit. Sure, upgrading our test was in the backlog for us, so it was on my radar. However, you know, we figured that kind of, you know, halfway through moving to Backdrop, we figured that, you know, that was the right time to do it. And the unexpected win was to have that opportunity then. And it's amazing because not only we have new tests, but it's going to save us a lot of money every single sprint that we do from now on, because it saves a lot of developers' time. So that was a wonderful add-on, so to speak. And then also, I just have to say, it is so awesome to hear when your senior developer says that they really like the UX on developing. Yeah, it's kind of nice to have good tools, right? So to sum up, our move to Backdrop CMS was really a huge success for us. And so we hope that it can be a huge success as well for others. And I will finish by saying that the key to success also for us within our team was the amount of trust amongst the members of our team. This was a big lift for every one of us, and it took a lot of courage to do it, and we did it. And so, yes. And I'll pause here. And I think we have Q&A, right? Is that right, Irina?
Yes, absolutely, totally. Folks, feel free to ask your questions, make comments, suggestions. And thank you for amazing presentation, and thank you for doing this project.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to present.
Thank you. Questions? Anyone?
Oh, Sarah World.
Sarah.
Somebody's got to break the ice.
Someone's
I can't stand a vacuum. I can wait like 5 seconds and then I'm just like, oh, there's silence.
gonna break.
All
Drives
right.
me nuts.
Cool.
What would you recommend as a training plan? How should people get their hands on it and start learning it? What would be a good path for people who might want to go into being site builder or developer?
That's a great question. So one of the things that I like about Backdrop also is it's so if you, do we have a link to the Backdrop site and the philosophy? I talked about it a little bit in the chat, but I don't think I threw a link up. I'll go get one. It depends, of course, on the learner. I tend to learn by tinkering, and I think that Backdrop CMS is a really fabulous platform for tinkerers and for things that, you know, Drupal 7 was really well known for, you know, content modeling and that sort of thing, and building innovative websites out of this array of you know, tools. So one of the first things that really helped the Stanford Drupal community launch, gosh, I'm talking 2007, maybe, we had Nancy Bauman in tech training, who sort of like saw what we were doing, was really supportive, and offered training in Drupal really early. So we don't have that in Backdrop just yet, but I see that Jen, we have one of the founders here with us today. We're fortunate to have Jen Lampton in our group. Hey, Jen, and she is putting some links in the chat about Backdrop documentation and so on. I guess one of the things that occurs to me is that the Stanford Drupal community is mature. We have a lot of people here who know Drupal. We have developers, but also I think significantly a lot of really capable site builders out there. So I think for that group, diving right in is probably a legitimate way to get started. But I'm really open to hear what other people think about that training question.
I'd like to add my 2 bits. There is a great training manual on YouTube by Simpla, which guides you step by step through Backdrop training. There are Backdrop events that you can see at the Backdrop site. And I think that as a trainer for Drupal 7 and WordPress and Drupal 9 on sites, I'll be happy to teach Backdrop session as well. One of huge advantages of Backdrop CMS that in many ways it's very similar to Drupal 7, so lots of tutorials and lots of training are very consistent.
I think there's a couple of Packet books also. So one of the the major tech publishers, Packet, and I think there are a couple of Backdrop books in publication right now. So that would also be a good place to start. Yeah.
Eric, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say as a developer anyways, just jumping right in is a way to do it. I always like to just download the software and create a new website from scratch on my local machine. I've built a couple of small Backdrop sites since we decided to go with this last year. For the developers in the room, I mean, it's basically 100% backwards compatible with Drupal 7. And so if you've used Drupal 7, there's virtually no learning curve for 85% of it. And then there are some like really cool new things that you can play around with, but you're not going to feel lost. It's the exact same hook system, the exact same kind of methodology as working with Drupal 7. Yeah, I see this question about is training more for, were you asking more about training for developers or training for builders or training for like new users? Maybe there's a better answer there.
For me anyway, I think it's really all of the above because we have all types at Stanford and all types of folks who own complex Drupal 7 sites, but as an owner of the site, they may not be a developer. They really might be more of a content editor, and maybe the developers left the university or was a contractor to begin with. So training can come in different flavors, but I think the sandbox link that you provided is a really good starting point for anybody going in at that entry level to get an understanding of how it works.
One thing that I would mention is, at least from the developer perspective, if you're looking for developers to upgrade a site, I would absolutely make it clear that Backdrop is extremely similar to Drupal 7, just because there's less name recognition for Backdrop. And some people would be like, oh, I don't really know what that is. But if they know that it's basically Drupal 7 in terms of API, they'll be like, oh yeah, I understand that. And one additional note there is that, because Drupal 7 had been on the internet or has been on the internet for 10 years, if you Google Drupal 7 my complex question, you get a great answer. Like there is just excellent documentation for Drupal 7 on the web. That doesn't exist for Backdrop, but just reword your question with Drupal 7 and you may have to make like a small 5% adjustment on the answer. But the same documentation applies, which is why it's so great, is that there's so much documentation existing for it.
I would say there's great documentation, also confusing documentation with like long comment strings. You're trying to figure out what to do. is not all awesome.
I think it opens a huge opportunity for creating cleaner and more robust backdrop documentation by taking only those things from Drupal 7 that are actually working at the end of the day, because while Drupal 7 was progressing and developing, lots of things were yes and no, you know, changing, how does it work? But now it is much more mature system, and because of that, documentation for backdrop can be much cleaner and much more specific. Any more questions? Suggestions, ideas, brainstorming?
You got the whole team here. We're not going to do this again. Oh, there's Sean.
Hi, guys. So this might be a question for Zach, and I'm going to go a little broader here. So this sort of situation that you have here is every software developer has seen this, and we're all really, really bad at it, which is we spend a whole lot of effort building a custom system, and then we're stuck when some security thing happens, a new version, and we have to upgrade it, right? I mean, everybody that's running Drupal 7 is having this problem right now. You've now identified this as a, as a mission critical app. So my question is, have you solved the problem of building in a sustainability model for this, like moving forward? Because I mean, you spent 550 hours. That's still a chunk of time. You got lucky because Backdrop was just an amazing possibility and saved you thousands of hours. Yeah. But that's still a big chunk of time for people working on it. So I'm asking because we haven't really figured it out yet. We run into this all the time. Some new thing shows up. We either have to rebuild it entirely or whatever, right? So how do you build in sustainability models for mission critical apps like this?
Well, I would say, like, if you've already jumped that gulf to Drupal 8, 9 plus, you're in pretty good shape there. Because of course, Drupal 8.9 and 9.0 are basically the same thing if you keep up with the API changes. There are, more simple websites on the Stanford Sites environment that were actually upgraded from 8 to 9 without the site owner even knowing. Like, that's brilliant, right? So there is nothing like that for custom applications like this. So you have to think harder about this problem. So as far as sustainability goes, I didn't have to go to my boss and ask for an additional $500,000 to do this. We did this with our regular budget plus 30K because that was me being optimistic. So we were, I don't want to get too much into the budgeting, but I'm very happy with the sustainability model here, looking at, so like I was talking about the systems development lifecycle and like charting out end of life for like Backdrop has a much smaller dependency profile than Drupal does. So and Jen knows more about this than I do, so she can chime in here too, but I don't think we're going to be at a moment like this again until 2027.
One comment.
What happens in 2027?
There we're looking at the end of life of PHP 8.4, and it's probably going to be Backdrop 2. Now I'm talking way out of turn. Jen Lampton, can I call on you?
Yeah, so Backdrop 2 is scheduled for 2025,
okay.
But 2027 is a good year because that'll probably be around end of support for Backdrop 1.
That's what I think.
Yeah. So, and I think that, changes in PHP are happening pretty fast, and we are trying, like right now, Backdrop is still compatible with like PHP 5.6 or something. So we're trying to like maintain whatever you're running your Drupal 7 site on right now, but that's not possible long-term because PHP is just moving faster than that. So yeah, I think the PHP change is likely to push the end of life for Backdrop 1. And I don't think there's any getting around that. But yeah, we do have plans for Backdrop 2, the move from Backdrop 1 to Backdrop 2 to be significantly easier than the move from Drupal to Backdrop. we're talking about like just dropping deprecated code and trying to figure out like front end changes in a way that it'll be easy. So yeah, we're sort of keeping in mind. We would love it if people didn't know their backdrop sites to move from 1 to 2. That's a great goal for us as well.
And Sean, I think there's some more work that we could do to really kind of visualize the logic here, because all of these projects that this work is built on top of, they'll have their own really predictable life cycles and sunset dates. So there's we can triangulate this and plan ahead. But thinking back as a director, like total cost of ownership, I'm very happy with the sustainability impacts from this decision.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? For your colleagues or from everyone in the community?
I guess I'll chime in one last thing. I think Eric is a very talented person and he's also modest. The performance improvements that we saw by moving to Backdrop and Pantheon together weren't going to happen by themselves. Eric was part of solving that problem. There were, I think, some specific things that he did that, in combination with the platform choices that gave us those performance boosts. But I think that could be generalized if there are other Backdrop folks here that are interested in making Backdrop plus Pantheon into a very high performing platform. So thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much. I think it was amazing project, amazing session, and it will be very exciting to see what happens next, because I believe that Backdrop CMS will be an amazing tool for specifically in academia as well as in many other areas. Please add your name.
Rina?
Yeah.
Hey, Rina, there's one more question from John.
Okay, go.
Sorry.
Totally.
Hi, John Romani, UC Irvine. I just wanted to echo what Zach was saying and comment a little on what Sean was saying. I'm facing the same thing, and on my little sites are moving easily to Backdrop CMS, just as you guys found. And my large sites with lots and lots of custom code are also moving fairly easily to Backdrop CMS. Both of those were going to be a real problem for me to move to Drupal 8 or 9. A complete rebuild versus just running an upgrade. And then the last thing that Sean was asking about, the sort of sustainability model, in my experiences, business requirements change all the time. And so, I'm looking for something with some longevity. I don't want to have to worry about it every year, but a 5-year lifetime is probably exceeding the business requirements for a lot of things that I do. So, at the end of those 5 years, we may be looking at requirements again. It might, make some changes to continue what we're already doing, or it might change direction and go in a different direction. And so it's Backdrop CMS has just worked out. Looks like it's going to work out really well for me.
John, that's a real excellent point. And I don't want to speak too much to the future of Backdrop CMS, but exactly as you said, if this is a 5-year option, it is an excellent 5-year option, and you find yourself in the same boat 5 years later, but that's a long time to not worry about it, or to not worry about a complete rebuild. So yeah, really great point.
I would like to use this opportunity to invite people to collaborate on GitLab, contributing to modules that still need to be converted or tested. There are a couple of modules like organic groups, for example, that need work before many sites that were built with Drupal 7 can be converted, and there's work happening all the time. And there are developers meetings. So please join the community that powers system that powers your application. And thank you to the founders, echoing that.
Definitely. You know, it felt brave for us to try this from where we sit, but you know, they really created a path for us and made it possible. So huge thank you to Jen and Nate Lampton.